and welcome to the Narrowing Path, Walking the Spiritual Walk. My name is Stephen Einstein. Thank you all for joining me again today as we do today's reading, August 23rd, from James Allen's Daily Meditations. August is shaped up to be quite a month, and I just started reading another book of his called The Way of Peace, and I've come to find out that the last couple of days of readings have come directly from that book, so that's where we're kind of coming out of for this one. So which is encouraging. I enjoy it. And so let's see where let's see where it ends up directing us to today. So this, of course, will be fresh to you and fresh to me, meaning this will be the first time that I read or hear the meditation right here on this podcast with you. So you'll get my genuine response, reactions, and observations and what I relate to about the reading. So it's always a good time. So here we go. This is August 23rd's reading from James Allen's Daily Meditations. The direct outcome of your meditations will be a calm spiritual strength. If you are given to hatred or anger, you will meditate upon gentleness and forgiveness, so as to become acutely alive to a sense of your harsh and foolish conduct. You will then begin to dwell in thoughts of love and gentleness, of abounding forgiveness, and as you overcome the lower by the higher, there will gradually, silently steal into your heart a knowledge of the divine law of love and its understanding, and an understanding of its bearing upon all the intricacies of life and conduct. And in applying this knowledge to your every thought, word, and act, you will grow more and more gentle, more and more loving, more and more divine. And thus, with every error, every selfish desire, every human weakness, by the power of meditation, it is overcome. Great is the overcoming power of holy thought. What this is a perfect description of the power of meditation and what I tend to believe the power that meditation can have. You know, he articulates things very well. And I think that opening line, I think, really says a lot. And it's, again, one of his matter of fact statements. The direct outcome of your meditations will be a calm spiritual strength. Who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want to meet the world with calmness, with peace, with a spiritual resiliency, right? With a strength. And as we've read before and in other meditations and talked about in other ways, it gives eventually, as we go through this purification process, we get this invincible state of mind and soul, right? We're completely and wholly not reliant on this material world. So therefore it can be whatever it needs to be. And that's a powerful place to function from. My dependency, trust, faith, and guidance comes from a power greater than myself, grounded in a spiritual way of living. And when you're coming from that, there's nothing that can beat it. You know, there's nothing that can even come close. So I don't do it perfectly, of course, but the more I practice it and aim towards that and take the steps that this path affords me to take, and sometimes you just step forward in faith. You can't even see where the next step is. It's sometimes a difficult thing. So, but a great opening line and a great reading overall. So the main body of this is If you are given to hatred or anger, you will meditate upon gentleness and forgiveness, so as to become acutely alive to the sense of your harsh and foolish conduct. So we're supposed to contemplate the virtuous choice in the situations we have trouble with, right? How would it look? How would it look if you were practicing perfect kindness instead of anger, right? That's a interesting thing to contemplate. How would these things look to you? How would you act if you had a perfect and divine righteousness in your behavior? If you had achieved the ideal that we all set out for, what would that look like? And then think about that. Think about the perspectives. Think about the aspects that get pulled into that, and the depth of it, and the realignment your perspective can take to it. It's powerful. It's such a powerful thing to be able to do, is to meditate and contemplate on what in some um, circles would say a Christ-like behavior in response to that reaction would be. That's a pretty powerful thing to think about. And the more you think about it, like we were talking about yesterday, or was that yesterday or the day before? I can't remember. Um, it was the day before that, which yeah, 2 days ago, the ending of the meditation was, if you are constantly dwell upon that which is selfish and debasing, you would ultimately become selfish and debasing. But the best part about that is the flip side of that is also true. If you dwell about what is gentle and forgiving, or loving and kind, what is righteous, what is Christ-like, what is um, virtuous, principled, disciplined, right? Those are what you will become. So that's what he talks about here when we talk about finding these, meditating on these things. They're an incredibly powerful vehicle for change, right? Because and this ties back into another concept of his, which is sin, because sin is born out of ignorance a lot of times. So when we can actually back up and we can take these contemplations and have a take an honest look at ourselves, our actions, and what we would prefer to do in the future, and how we would prefer to behave and act and conduct ourselves in the future, right? It gives us awareness. Sometimes we have to talk to somebody about it after we've contemplated it for a while, right? Because I'm not always accurate in my contemplations, but who is always, right? So it's important to keep that in mind, that the more you expand your thoughts, the less ignorance you can obtain, and the more you can take right actions. So you will then begin to dwell in thoughts of love, of gentleness, of abounding forgiveness, and as you become the lower by the higher, there will gradually si- there will gradually silently steal into your heart a knowledge of the divine law of love, and an understanding of its bearing upon the intricacies of life and conduct. So, when you begin to dwell in thoughts of love, of gentleness, of abounding forgiveness, okay, I read that wrong the first time, this next part. And as you overcome the lower by the higher, right? So, when we are dwell in thoughts, so contemplate, we think about, we consider, we really apply for these principles of love and gentleness and abounding forgiveness, you overcome the lower by the higher. So the higher virtued life, the higher righteous life, the higher ideal that we're aiming at, right? We overcome those animalistic, debasing, self-serving, self-indulgent actions and mindsets that we've sunk so deep into. So So as you overcome the lower by the higher, there will gradually, silently steal into your heart a knowledge of the divine law of love with an understanding of its bearing upon all the intricacies of life and conduct. So the more you dwell and meditate on the things that are born from love, so love itself, kindness, love, gentleness, forgiveness, courage, integrity, compassion, understanding, service, right? These are just some that I can name right on the top of my head that come from a place of love. So when you dwell on any of those, or when you consider any of those and you meditate on them, you're really meditating on loving behaviors. So everything that you've come to understand or discover or recognize through doing this process is you becoming acquainted with knowledge of the divine law of love and its implementation and threading throughout this world and this life. Pretty powerful place, pretty powerful thing, and pretty awesome in the truest sense of the word. Understanding to be gifted with. And in applying this knowledge to your every thought, word, and act, you will grow more and more gentle, more and more loving, more and more divine. So, through after the meditation and the contemplation, and you really go through this process of understanding how being loving would look in these situations, and and practicing these other character qualities, right? You have to go through with the application in your thought, word, and action, right? You have to actually, this is where a lot of the fall down is. A lot of people like to, what do they say, talk the talk, but not walk the walk, for a modern saying to say to it. But it's, it's a lack of action that gets put in to actually back up what is understood about this spiritual world. And they'll continue to live in a way that doesn't coincide with what they believe. It creates quite a painful place to be too, actually. When you're living in direct conflict with what you know to be right. It's hard. Growing more and more gentle, more and more loving, more and more divine. Divine. Whatever. Almost attractive word that is, because you it has so much alluring positive energy around it, right? Powerful word. And thus, with every error, every selfish desire, every human weakness, by the power of meditation, it is overcome. Because we understand, we learn, we take the time, the effort, and the action to actually change it, to understand and contemplate it, and then put into action the differences we need to put in. And when we can do that, you can overcome. And this is the purification process that we talk about here, right? Like, this is what, in summation, the whole process is going to look like. The power of meditation, it is overcome. Every error, every selfish desire, every human weakness by the power of meditation is overcome. What a promise, right? Any and all. And that's so encouraging to me. So it ends with this: great is the overcoming power of holy thought. So, yeah, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about divine thinking. We're talking about divine actions, divine concepts, spiritual concepts that have always existed and will exist. They will always be there. It will always be ready to be rediscovered if everything is lost. That's pretty amazing to me and a pretty incredible realization about spirituality and living a different way of life and living in accordance to as close as we can surmise a God of our understanding's will or the source's will, the creator's will, whatever terminology you'd like to use. Holy thought is taking steps towards that. It's incredible. So, uh, absolutely incredible, powerful reading today about meditation and its vital implementation in people's lives and in your journey to change how you're living. Meditation will be key. And remember, the direct outcome of your meditations will be a calm, spiritual strength. That's a promise. So, thank y'all for joining me again today, though. That was um, I feel very encouraged. So, I'm looking forward to seeing what tomorrow's brings. Hope y'all come on and join me again. So, until next time, thanks.